We had some preseason action from the Browns last night, but first, there is a significant roster addition to address. Shelby Harris is now a Cleveland Brown. The Browns signed him to a one-year deal. They have released defensive tackle Michael Dwumfor in order to make room for him. The exact money isn't quite known, but it is rumored to be worth between $5.5 to $6 million for that 1 year. There are going to be shenanigans to help with the cap hit, some void years, stuff with bonuses. For the specific details on those, if you're interested, I recommend following Jack Duffin on social media. At least that's what I do on Twitter. He's very precise when he definitely knows how those numbers work and all those crazy contract rules and what you can get away with as an NFL GM making these contracts. I feel like he is definitely a very worthy follow in that aspect. So the Browns had him for a workout visit a while ago. It kind of went radio silent for a little bit, and then they ended up signing him. So maybe Shelby Harris not necessarily wanting to get into the hustle and bustle of in the heart of training camp, but he is in the organization now. Now look, Shelby Harris, he's not the best player in the world. Obviously, you don't expect him to have the same kind of impact at defensive tackle as Dalvin Tomlinson, but what he provides and what some of the Browns were lacking up to this point was an actual reliable starting presence at defensive tackle 2 next to Tomlinson, because before this we were really just hoping to see somebody step up to fill into that role, maybe play a little bit above expectations. Siaki Ika has been encouraging. We've seen what Maurice Hurst can do when he's healthy, but health has been a huge issue for him. Maybe Jordan Elliott kind of takes that leap this year, although I'm not sure why it would be this year, not any previous years. I mean, there was a Tommy Togiai sighting in the preseason game yesterday, but nobody's expecting Tommy Togiai to step up to grab a starting role anytime soon. But now what this does with this Shelby Harris move is that this puts those guys likely into the rotation rather than hoping one of these guys can jump up into the starting 11 on defense, which I think is good, especially for a guy like Siaki Ika, who at his size, would he be able to sustain regular starting minutes in the NFL currently? I'm not sure. Siaki Ika, he's also a rookie, so that inexperience is also probably going to be helpful for him to not be thrust into a starting role as soon as possible. I really love this move. This is obviously, I don't know how this could be bad for the Browns, because again, it is a 1-year deal, so it's not like he's going to be eating up a ton of cap space for multiple years. I know he's 32 when he's older, but again, it's just 1 year, so you're not really worried about what he's going to look like as he ages into his 30s, because up to last season he was still pretty good. So there's still gas left in the tank. We just saw it, and again, he's not going to be eating up cap space after this year because it's only a 1-year deal. This is a very, very low risk, potentially high reward move here for Andrew Berry and the Browns. I know next year's cap situation kind of looks like a mess, but for this season, it's all shipshape pretty much. So with that, we're going to be moving on to the recap from the Week 1 preseason game yesterday. It was a 17-15 loss to Washington. The score doesn't really matter all that much. The Browns' only home preseason game, although the Hall of Fame game was essentially a preseason home game, that with it being in Canton and all. Jacoby Brissett returning to Cleveland got a pretty warm welcome from the dog pound and got a rushing touchdown as well. Usually don't like former players having success against the Browns, but it's the preseason. Go off, get your rushing touchdown. That's fine with me. Now, the game finally got underway after an hour-plus long weather delay, and I was pretty encouraged by the starters on both sides of the ball. You had Zadarius Smith forcing a hold in the end zone for a safety. The defensive line already looking great, and again, that Shelby Harris addition I think is just actually unfair for opposing offensive lines to try to deal with. Now, the main point of interest was going to be how Deshaun Watson looked, and I thought he did. He was pretty solid on his first and only drive. Didn't do a whole lot over the air, 3 for 3 for 12 yards, but he was very effective with his legs, scrambling for a good number of first downs. I do feel like that was probably a factor into why he only played for one drive, because the field is just getting downpoured on. You could have some slip and some kind of like non-contact thing. There's also, if he's going to be scrambling and defenders are going to be going after him, you might want to pull him out of there sooner rather than later. And also, even though his drive ended off poorly with that failed fourth down conversion, the rest of the drive that had him leading the team down the field looked pretty good. And I think if it's 3rd and 4th and short and you're on the goal line, I know preseason is the time to try to do new things, but if in the regular season you have that situation, just line up in a power formation, try to push people 1 yard forward. I feel like that's probably the best move going forward. However, the rest of the quarterback battle, Joshua Dobbs played in the majority of the first half. Couldn't really quite get a whole lot going, through a pretty rough interception on a promising drive. DTR and Kellen Mond, I thought, both played well in the second half. They both led a touchdown drive. Kellen Mond definitely played better than he did in the Hall of Fame game, and I think the case for DTR as being the straight-up backup quarterback got a little bit stronger after yesterday's performances by both him and Joshua Dobbs. Joshua Dobbs not showing out all that well, with DTR continuing his strong performances. That could be an example of just Washington leaving in some better players at defense in the first half, while in the second half it was just a pure backup bubble roster player fest. So maybe DTR was playing against some lesser competition, but all we really have is to see who did better in their reps, and DTR definitely excelled in his reps, while Joshua Dobbs didn't look all that great. Elijah Moore, I thought, was pretty good in his time on the field. He would, however, leave the game with a rib injury, but the x-rays reportedly came back negative, and while no injury is good, I'm certainly glad it wasn't anything major that is expected to take him out for any long-term period of time. Austin Watkins continues to show out, making a good case for him to grab a roster spot, especially if Marquise Goodwin's blood clots don't end up improving. That is a tough situation, but it is the NFL. It is kind of a next man up mentality. So if Goodwin is going to have illness or injury issues or concerns heading into the regular season, Austin Watkins just might grab a roster spot. Cedric Tillman, I thought he showed some pretty good flashes. Anthony Schwartz had like 3 drops like he always does. The crowd booed each one. One of the funniest moments of the game was when he kind of got a Bronx cheer from the crowd and thought he caught a ball, but it turns out that he bobbled it out of bounds and it was incomplete anyway. Cade York missing his field goal attempt of 46 yards. He's now 0 for 2 in preseason play. Did make the extra point that he had, but the 2 consecutive misses in preseason play is definitely starting to get a lot of Browns fans very antsy. I've seen plenty of calls for him to be cut, or at the very least bringing in another kicker to have competition for him. As far as Cade York goes, look, I'm not a kicking expert, but if it is a case of him having nerves and having the yips, I'm not sure why he's nervous, because there's obviously, at least up to this point, there hasn't been shown that there's going to be any consequences for a missed kick. So if he's nervous, I'm not sure why, because whether he makes it or misses it, he's the only kicker on the roster as of this moment. I thought James Hudson at offensive tackle played well, but he seemed to jump early on a lot of plays, but the refs never called it. That seems to be something that the refs are getting more and more lenient on, is just tackles just kind of jumping and moving back about a half second before the snap. So if that's something the refs aren't going to call, then I guess use that to your advantage. And I thought James Hudson played well other than that, so that's fine. The offensive line depth in general had a pretty good game. I didn't really feel like any of the quarterbacks were completely running for their lives. I mean, obviously they had to evade pressure every now and then, but I do feel like the offensive line did a pretty good job of limiting super huge sack opportunities. Ronnie Hickman had 2 interceptions. That should definitely help him in the battle for that 4th safety spot. He did really get turned around pretty bad by Jahan Dotson on his touchdown grab, though. The second quarter in general was pretty rough for Cleveland, although I do kind of feel like Washington left a lot of their better players in longer than the Browns did. It seemed like Washington was trying to see some good results out of their guys. They waited until they saw something from Sam Howell to get him out of the game. They pulled him only after his first touchdown throw to Dotson, and which was, I think that was into the second quarter, was when Sam Howell did that. So I feel like Washington was looking for some kind of positive sign from some of their upper level players, and they eventually got it, because eventually they're going to do something against players on the Browns that aren't necessarily crazy impact starters or anything. But in general, even though they lost the game, I was encouraged by a lot of what I saw. The early drives where the Browns had a lot of their starters in, I felt like they went pretty well for the Browns. Obviously, Deshaun Watson getting only 1 drive can't really make too much of what a sustained game would look like from a quarterback if they're only in for 1 drive. But in that 1 drive, I thought he was pretty solid. And overall, the quarterbacks in the second half, DTR and Kellen Mond, they both looked like they could definitely maneuver an offense down the field. And overall, again, while you don't want to take an L during the preseason, it's the preseason. Experiment with some things, do some things you wouldn't normally do. And I feel like it was a fine game for Cleveland. I feel like they escaped without any major injuries or any major players. That Elijah Moore scare notwithstanding, because again, the x-rays were negative. That's not going to be that huge of a thing moving forward. I feel like in general it was a bit of a successful game for the Browns, but we'll see how it goes moving forward. You can let me know what you think about this game down in the comments below, what you like to see the Browns do in the preseason and with some roster moves moving forward. Thank you all for watching if you did make it this far into the video, and I will see you at the next one.